So the Springboks have named their team to face Scotland in the opening game of their Pool B World Cup campaign this weekend. They've named it a little bit early, which I love. Normally the Springboks always do tend to name their team early. It's always pretty helpful. So I'm going to get into that in this video. Springbok fans, what do you make of this team? Not too many surprises really, but there are probably a few things that we can get into. And give me your thoughts on the Scotland game as well, how you see your team doing. So make sure you drop a comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. So there's a lot of brilliant fixtures this opening weekend in the World Cup. I think a lot of people would probably have this one right at the top of their list. Maybe the France-New Zealand as the opener might surpass it for a few people. But I think given the fact that this is the hardest World Cup pool that we've ever seen, that this is a massive game for both of these sides, in particular Scotland as well, you would have thought. But it's just going to be fascinating. I'm going to be in Marseille for it as well, so I will be doing a video after the game. Make sure you keep out an eye for that one. But this is the South African team. They're starting the front row. Kitshoff, Marx, Malherbe. Not too much of a shock there. Malcolm Marx, Mbonambi, they have kind of fluctuated of who's been the starter, but you've always got the impression that Malherbe and Kitshoff are the starting props when South Africa name their strongest team. Then Eben Etzebeth, partnered by Franco Mostert in the second row. Kolisi, Pieter-Steph du Toit and Jasper Wiese complete the pack. Wiese over Duane Vermeulen. I'll get onto that in just a second. 50s up for Faf de Klerk, 50 caps for the scrum half. Libbok at 10. De Allende and Kriel in the centres. That's probably the most interesting part of the selection, and I'll get into that in just a second. Then Kolbe, Arendse and Willemse at 15. Willemse over le Roux as well is quite interesting. So I feel like I say it every time with the Springboks team selection. I'm going to have to try and not do it every single video throughout the World Cup because it'll get pretty boring. But once again, it's a strong Springboks team. It's what we've come to expect. They can rotate. Whoever they're going to pick within that squad, you're pretty impressed with. I suppose the interesting things really is why this 15 and why this 23 for the challenge of Scotland. And partly, we'll be able to speak about that more once Scotland have named their team, whenever that is, on tomorrow, I think, on Friday, Scotland named their team. But as I say, let's get into a couple of the different areas that maybe are more interesting for people. De Allende and Kriel are opted in the centres. I do think there are a few selections here, and that's one of them, that is as a result of the Scotland team they will face. And it's quite an experienced Scotland side, and also it's a Scotland team that can attack, particularly in that back line. If you think of Finn Russell pulling the strings, of Tuapolotu and Hugh Jones in the centres, Van der Merwe, Darcy Graham out wide with Kinghorn at fullback, presuming that's going to be their back line. It is a good Scotland backline, and it is a backline that can hurt you, particularly when they're able to spread it into the wide channel. So I think how they defend in the centres and in the midfield is going to be pretty key. Now, of course, the forwards will come into that as well because of how they'll line up defensively. But I just wonder with De Allende and Kriel whether Rassie Erasmus, Jacques Nienaber feel that it's just a little bit more experienced and a safer pair of hands to see them through this game, possibly. I know Esterhuizen has played really well, so you do feel a little bit sorry for him, but I just think maybe the experience of De Allende is ultimately the reason he's got the nod in this game. And Kane and Moody as well. I know he impressed at 13 against the All Blacks, but the difference between that match and the first game of a World Cup where you have to be absolutely on it, again, maybe just the experience of Jesse Kriel, even though Moody might have a higher ceiling than him, and down the line might end up having a much better international career. I think many people would probably expect that to be the case. I just think first game of the World Cup, they've maybe gone for the option that makes more sense. It's maybe the safer option, but also, I think, a sensible option as well, to go for the experience in the centres, which you're going to need against this Scotland team. Also, I mentioned Willie le Roux, on the bench. I would have maybe expected to see him come in at fullback, but actually I think when I look at Willemse, he's played really, really well. His form, I think, is very good. I think he's earned that starting spot. And then when you've got someone with the experience of le Roux coming off the bench later on in the game, who can still play as that second receiver, who's still vastly experienced in that back line and knows how they want to attack, he's a really good option coming off the bench. So I think either way, which way you start those guys, whether it's le Roux starting, whether it's Willemse, it's still a pretty strong option for the Boks. And also, I just wanted to mention a word on Grant Williams at scrum half to be the bench option. Obviously 6-2 split on the bench. Was injured was it at the start of the Rugby Championship, I think, against Argentina? Or was it, well, that wasn't the first game, was it? The Aussies was the first game. But he got injured. You weren't sure if he was going to get enough opportunity. He's part of the squad. and then he's going to be part of the team for this game. So congratulations to him. I think that's quite a story really there. But as I say, overall, I think particularly the forward pack for the Boks is kind of what we expect at this point. Who partnered Etzebeth in the second row was kind of interesting. Mostert comes in there. And the fact that it's Wiese over Vermeulen as well. I actually think whilst it's still mega powerful, it's quite an athletic pack as well, particularly when I look at the selections of Malcolm Marx and Jasper Wiese. And that's not for a moment to criticise what Mbonambi and Vermeulen bring, because they're both brilliant players as well. But I think it's maybe a little bit more explosive, a little bit more agile. Could that be to combat some of what the Scotland pack will bring with Jamie Ritchie, or if they pick Hamish Watson or Jack Dempsey, depending on the selections that the Scots go for? Or is it purely just about the Boks and what they want to do for this game? As I say, it's a strong team. There's danger all over the pitch. I think in part they do want an element of experience there because of the threat of Scotland. But this is a massive game in Pool B, isn't it? I still feel like it's bigger for Scotland. I think if Scotland lose here, then they are up against it. They have to still play Ireland to have a hope of getting out of the group. As for the Boks, what a way to start it. And actually for both of these teams, they really have to be on their mettle for this game. I think that's one of the fascinating things about it, is unlike some other teams, like the Irish, for example, who can feel their way into the tournament, who have been able to rest and rotate and not play as many warm-up games, South Africa and Scotland have to be absolutely on it from the first whistle. And it's going to be a great occasion. 4:45 kickoff in France for the game, Sunday afternoon in Marseille. Going to be a hot weekend. Going to be absolutely awesome. So drop a comment down below. What do you make of the team selection? As I say, for me, not a huge amount of surprises, really. Just a few interesting things to talk about. But it is a Boks team that I think are prepped, are primed, are ready to go for a defence of their title. Doesn't mean they're going to, because there's a lot of other good teams in the competition. But I think they're certainly in a pretty good place. I think the squad, actually, that they have been able to create and develop over the last 4 years is genuinely brilliant, and I think is a testament to the work of those coaches and the way in which they've rotated. I still look back, I know I've mentioned it before on the channel, I still look back on that game against Wales in the second test of the 3 they played when Wales toured South Africa, where the Boks completely rotated. They ended up losing at home to Wales for the first time. What a result for the Welsh, but they massively rotated. They then changed all their team again for the 3rd test and won the series. And I think there's almost been that element of being happy to sacrifice certain moments and matches, even though they would have wanted to win that test match and it was tight as well. They could have won it, but sacrifice certain moments for the benefit of the squad when it comes to the Rugby World Cup. Let's see if it works out. You always need a little bit of luck to win a World Cup as well. But in terms of the squad that they've been able to create, I think it's excellent. So comment down below, what do you make of the squad? How do you see this game going? And also subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. And I'll see you in the next one.